Hello, welcome to Microsoft Azure Training Series. My name is Neeraj. I'm an enterprise architect and Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate, and I will be your instructor for this course.
Hi there. This is part 2 of the Understanding Microsoft Azure Storage, where we will mostly be working on the demo. The link to part 1 of the Microsoft Azure Storage series is there on your screens right now. So without wasting much time, let's get started with the demo. We will start by logging into the Azure Portal, and I'll be using my Azure account to log in. I'll give my password and click on sign in. Once I'm signed in, I'm on my dashboard. From here, I need to first create a resource group, but I can create that later while we are creating the storage account. So I'll choose the storage account and then try to create a new storage account. Once we are there, we'll click on add. And here we are, where we can create our storage account. The first thing is to choose a subscription. For me, I have just one subscription, which is storage account, which is pay as you go. And from the resource group, since I do not have one, I'll create one with the name of ATCSL. I'll give this storage account a name, which is ATCSL demo storage. And from the location, it is now recommending me to use the West US, but I can choose Central US as well because that is another recommended option. And since I'm in Central US, I'll be choosing that. From the performance tier, I have standard and premium. So the standard storage, they are backed by magnetic drives and are less expensive. The standard storage accounts are useful where we require the bulk storage or where the data is accessed infrequently. The premium, on the other hand, they are backed by the solid state drive, the SSDs, where the read-write throughput is much better than the magnetic drives, which is the case with the standard storage. Now, if we talk about the account kind, I have three options here. One is the storage V2, storage V1, and the blob storage. Blob storage is specifically for storing the blob data, whereas storage V2 and the general purpose V1 is for the blobs, files, tables, and queues. If you are uncertain or unaware of these terms or the account kinds or any of the replication or the access tier, I would highly recommend that you see the part 1 of the training series of the Azure storage and then come back again here. So from the account kind, I'll choose storage V2. From the replication, I'm going for read access geo-redundant storage. And the access tier is hot because we will be frequently accessing the data. I'll click on review plus create. Once validated, I can click on create. But hold on. What we are going to also do is review the other tabs. So we will go to networking. And from here, I have certain options that I have. One is that the connectivity method is public endpoint, that all the networks can access it. Then we have the public endpoint where I can put in selected networks that can have access and the private endpoint. If we go to the advanced, I have different options here. So secure transfer required is enabled, and then Azure file, that is disabled. It is not premium, although it is general purpose V2, but the storage account kind is not premium. It's just a standard. From the data protection perspective, I have the blob soft delete as disabled. I can enable it. So what happens is when you turn on the soft delete, it enables you to save and recover your blob data in many cases where the blobs or the blob snapshots are deleted. Now then we have the Data Lake Storage Gen 2. What exactly is Data Lake Storage Gen 2? So this storage account kind, which is the storage account general purpose V2, it acts as a data lake storage if this is enabled, and we can use it to perform the exploratory data analysis and in the data science process. So first the data enters here and then we can utilize that data to perform any kind of analysis. For now, we will keep this as disabled. Once we are through with all the settings, we will click on review plus create again and then click on create. And we will wait for the account to be created. Now that our storage account has been deployed, we will click on go to resource, and here we will take a moment to review the settings that we have. So if you see, the resource group is ATCSL, whereas the location is Central US. The subscription is pay as you go, and all the other settings that we had selected. So if you look at the right hand side, we have the performance kind as a standard, whereas the access tier is hot. The replication is RAGRS, which is the read access geo-redundant storage, and the account kind is storage v2. And since the account kind is storage v2, we have the options here to create containers, file shares, tables, and queues. So what we are going to do now is to click on containers. Once we are on that page, we will click on plus and then give it a name. Once that is done, we will select the public access level, and I'll try to explain these three options one by one. We have the private with no anonymous access, and then we have the blob, which is the anonymous read access to blobs only. And then we have the container access. So if you have selected the private, there is no access to anyone outside. Whereas if you have selected the blob, any person will have access only to the single blob in the container and not all the blobs inside it. Whereas if we choose the option of container, access is granted to all the blobs within the container, but not all the containers within the storage account. So we have to make sure what kind of access level we want others to have. So we will choose private and click on OK. And this will be quickly done. So we have our container ready. Here we can upload the blobs or any files for that matter. And let us look at the other options. So here we have the file share. We can click on plus file share and give it a name and the quota, and we will have our file share ready where we can upload the files. Then we have the tables and the queues as well. So it works in a similar fashion that we have the containers and the file shares. One thing to be noticed is tables here are not relational tables, although there are tables, but they are not relational database tables. Going back to the storage account, if we click on the access control, we can do a role assignment and we can grant access to anyone to whom we want the access to be given. So we can choose the name and then click on it and give the access. Here I have just one user, which is myself, and I already have the administrative access to it. Now we will have a look at the events. So storage account also supports events. So we can create logic apps or the Azure functions, or there are other options where we can handle the events that are performed on the storage account. So we can create a logic app if in case there is an upload of the video or the image or any large file, we shall be able to track it as an event and perform any actions that we want. Then we have Azure functions. Now these storage account can also trigger the Azure functions. So if any activity is happening on the storage account, Azure functions will get triggered. We also have other options where we can create the webhooks, we can create the storage queues, we can have the event hubs or the hybrid connections. But for now, we will focus on creating the logic apps. But wait, let us come to the demo later and let me show you some of the other settings that is available for us in this storage account. So the first one is the access keys. Now if you come inside, you will see the name of the storage account as well as two keys. One of them is key 1 and the other one key 2. These two keys basically allows applications to talk to the storage account for connection and retrieving and sending the data. Key 2 is basically a fallback option. Now, if the key 1 gets compromised, what you can do is you can provide key 2 and then you can click on the reset button for key 1, generate a new key and a new connection string, and then you can use that key as the primary connection string again, and then refresh the key 2 as well. So that is how the key 1 and key 2 allows access to the storage account for different applications. This is one of the secured methods to access the storage account. Next one is the Geo Replication. If you remember, while we created the storage account, the replication type we chose was the RAGRS, and that is why you see two locations here. So Microsoft Azure finds the best possible Geo Replication and maps it to your storage account. And then we have the storage account endpoints, and these are the URLs which can be used to access the containers, the file shares, the tables, and the queues. If you notice, the Central US is the primary region, whereas the East US2 is the secondary region, and they both are available. One very important point to notice here that the customer control failover is not supported in neither the primary or the secondary region. This is controlled entirely by Microsoft. We then have the configuration. So here you will see all the configuration that we had selected during the creation of the storage account. Here we have the replication. Now what I will be doing is I'll change the RAGRS to locally redundant storage. And once we do that, we'll click on save and then we'll go to the Geo Replication and see what has happened. Now you see that we have only one region, which is Central US, and the same will be used for our disaster recovery. We then have the shared access signature. This is another way to securely access the storage account. It basically is a URI that grants restricted access to your Azure storage resources. Now if you see here, we have the allowed services, which are blobs, files, queues, and tables, and the allowed resource types. And then we have the allowed permissions, which are read, write, delete, list, add, and so on and so forth. One thing to note here is we can define a start date and time along with the end date and time, until which this shared access signature can be used to access the storage account. And then we have the allowed list of IP addresses, which we can provide here, and only those IP addresses will be allowed. And also we use one of the keys that I had shown you earlier. It can be either key 1 or a key 2. So basically it provides a fine-grained secure access to your storage accounts. The next one is the firewall settings, where we can allow access from either all the networks or the selected networks. If we click on the selected networks, we can define an IP range which are allowed access to the storage accounts. And then we have the exceptions. So again, you have a more fine-grained control on your storage account and how you want to allow the users to access it. Next is the static website settings. Now, if we enable the static website settings, what it will allow is that you can host the static content. You can upload the web pages and also the client-side scripts. We then have the properties. Here, the settings are almost similar to what we see in the overview tab, but it also displays the resource ID of the blob service, the file service, the queue service, and the table service, along with the primary service endpoint for each of these services. Then comes the custom domain, where you can have a domain for your blob so that you can access the blob or the website data in your Azure storage account, but that is generally not used. Next in the discussion pipeline is the Azure CDN, which is the Content Delivery Network. Now, this CDN is basically designed for faster and reliable transfer of the data. Actually, the large files like the audio or the video or the images. And what we can do is create a CDN profile, which is a Content Delivery Network profile. We can use the existing if we have, select the pricing tier, and then give it a name. Once that is done, we will click on create, and a new Content Delivery Network for our Azure storage account will be created. We then have the Storage Explorer, which is currently in preview within the Azure Portal. And this can be used to upload or download, that is, send and retrieve data from the blob containers or the file shares, and even from the queues and tables. What we can also do is install and configure the Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer tool on our desktop. And this can also be used to access your storage account. Once installed and configured, it will show all the storage account and its content within the Storage Explorer. We will go back to the Azure portal, and there we will try to upload a file from the Storage Explorer. We will click on upload, select a file, and choose a PNG image for now. We will click on upload. And once that is done, what we are going to do is to verify if it appears within the container. So we'll scroll down, we'll go to the containers, click on the container name, and there you go. We have the same image. So what we can do is, from the three dots that we see here, we will click and we will click on view. So we have the same image and the image has been uploaded. What we can additionally do is generate a SAS token. So we'll use the key 1 and generate a shared access signature URL. We can copy that, open a new browser and paste it there. You see the same image in the browser as well, and that one using the shared access signature URL. We are finally back to the events where we are going to create a logic app that will work when an image is uploaded. So we can click on create. But before that, let us configure the SendGrid app. So what SendGrid does is helps the application send and retrieve emails via SendGrid. So we will create a new SendGrid account. We will click on plus and then select a resource group. The subscription is pay as you go. And from the location, I'm going to choose Central US, give it an account name and the password along with confirm password. And for the pricing tier, I'm going to choose free as of now because this is a demo. And then give other details as well, like the first name, the last name, the email address, the company and the website. All these informations are mandatory. The website currently does not show a red asterisk, which is a mandatory field, but I noticed that if we don't do that, it will throw an error message. So once that is done, we will click on validate and create. And once that is done, we are there within our ATSL SendGrid page. From there, we are going to click on the manage and we are there within our SendGrid app. Now the first thing we need to do is to verify the email address that we will be using here. So what SendGrid does is it will send you an email verification to the email address that you had provided. Once the email has been verified and validated, you can come back to SendGrid app, scroll down, click on the API keys and create a new API key. Give it a name and then with the full access, generate a new API key. You need to copy this API key and this will be used in the logic app that we will be creating. And you need to copy it and keep it in the notepad because once you close this, you will not be able to retrieve it. You need to recreate or regenerate the API key again. So we are back in the Azure portal and now we will click on create. What we are going to do is first click on the code and then back on the designer because what I have seen is it does not give this workflow directly when you click on the create app button. So from the resource type, I'm going to choose the Microsoft storage accounts. And for the resource name, I'll give it a name. And for the event type, I have chosen blob created. Once that is done, the next thing, I'm going to delete the second step and add a new step where I'll be using SendGrid to send an email. So I'll choose send email version 3 and then I'll give the name for the connection and the API key that we had copied earlier. And now I have to give the from, the to, along with the subject and the message that needs to be sent when any new image is uploaded. Uh-oh, I forgot the from and the to address. So I'll just fill in quickly and click on save again once that is done. So I'll click on save again. And now I have to give a name to this logic app. I'll click on create. And once that is done, I'll go to my Azure Storage Explorer and try to upload a JPG file. I'll choose a file and click on upload. Once that is done, I'll go back to the containers and check if the file shows to be there. And it definitely does. So what is the next step? The next thing we are going to do is to check whether we have received an email for this or not. And there you go. We now have an email sent via SendGrid app for the image that was uploaded in the Azure Blob storage. I will finally talk about the activity log, which contains the list of all the activities that were performed on the storage account. What I would suggest is, as an Azure administrator, go to the Azure portal, create a storage account for yourself, and perform all the steps that we just did in our demo. That way, you will have a hands-on experience on how the Azure Storage Explorer works, and you will also be exploring certain new avenues when you are doing it yourself. So that was it for the demo for now. Keep Azuring.